in our 2020 series, let's say. And we're focusing on Central Eastern European research and innovation. So today, of course, we're bringing everything into focus under the recovery package at the EU level, member state level, and trying to glean what types of strategies, long-term strategies, are being pursued in order to ensure a more connected and green future in Central and Eastern Europe. So I think it's always of stimulus measures and funds. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today, our distinguished speakers. And in fact, I think we're still missing one, but again, we'll go ahead and get started. We have Peter Balik, who is the Director General from the Ministry of Investments and Informatization and Regions of the Slovak Republic. Thank you for joining us. We have Eleonora Moro, who's a researcher from E3G, and she'll be sharing some key points from a work that is in progress on Central and Eastern European innovation. So thanks for joining us, Eleonora. Mr. Antanas Georgiev, thanks for joining us today, the Dean and Head of Department at FIBA, University of Sofia. Thanks for joining us. We have Maros Halama, who's the Vice Dean for Science, Innovation, and International Relations at Technical University of Košice. Thanks for joining us, Maros. And we also have Mr. Attila Imre from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, the Department of Energy Engineering at Budapest University of Technology and Economics. So Attila, thank you for joining us as well. And very quickly, before we get underway, I would just like to provide a very brief recap of the two discussions that we had earlier in the year. As I mentioned, this is under the Lighthouse program at GLOBSEC. We have two initiatives, one focusing on energy transition and the other on the digital transition. And obviously, there's a lot of convergence with these two streams. And that's the idea today, is to bring these together. So all the way back in March, Attila was actually in person in Prague for a roundtable that was in fact interrupted by the first wave of COVID, but we proceeded nonetheless. Seems like an eternity ago. Unfortunately, we're still under even stricter limitations at this point. But I would say the main takeaways, we were focusing on the European funds and performance criteria for EU funds. I think there was recommendation that we need more performance criteria to follow the climate and energy priorities. And in fact, it was suggested that ministries, relevant ministries, request more support from DG Reform in order to support policy implementation, economic governance, and perhaps even delegating oversight of cohesion funds to technocrats from Brussels, perhaps. So that's something that maybe Peter can address from the public sector. Then later on in the summer, under the Digital Lighthouse platform, I think the emphasis was the growing West-East innovation gap, which I'm sure Eleonora will touch upon. Over the last decade, Central and Eastern Europe, by all the numbers, has fallen further behind Western Europe and its innovation capabilities. And again, that's kind of the focus here, is how we can turn that around in the next decade, starting now in 2020, and really creating convergence rather than divergence over the next decade. And another key point, just on the road from research to innovation, this takes time to develop infrastructure and technology transfer from the research centers and universities, which we have several voices we can hear from today. And this is something that is not fully developed in Central and Eastern Europe now, but like everything else, now is the time to get things in order and make sure that, you know, everything is as strategically coordinated as possible. And I would lead into Peter, who again will have to leave earlier in the next 20 minutes. But what I wanted to do was talk about the challenge in absorbing cohesion funds in Central and Eastern Europe. And maybe Hungary is one exception, but the countries tend to rely on the +3 rule, which is spending from the previous MFF. And there's still challenges, you know, absorbing that funding and using it strategically. So in Slovakia, of course, there's a new government and a new ministry, and Mr. Balik will speak to us from that position in the new ministry. And I would just simply start by asking, you know, what the biggest challenges are to ensure that not only the +3 funds, but all of the new stimulus funds and looking ahead to the next MFF are spent more cost effectively and are used, of course, to leverage private investment, which is something that maybe has proved to be quite difficult historically in the region. So is that something that can be turned around and rather quickly with you know, so much public funds, you know, coming into action? So that's pretty much where I'd like to set this up. And for anybody that has questions, please do write them into the chat, and we will get to them during the discussion portion. But for now, I would hand it over to Mr. Balik, and if you could just share with us sort of how your ministry is handling these funds, you know, with the new government structure, how you're working with other ministries, and what you see is the real opportunity for Slovakia to kind of change the way that it's absorbing and using public funding. So Peter, the floor is yours. I think we can't hear you, Peter. You're not muted, but microphone maybe? No, not working. All right, we'll give him a minute because he has to leave in 10 minutes. All right, let's try that again.
Okay, good morning.
There we are. Fantastic.
Okay,
thanks,
sorry,
Peter.
I had to disconnect. This happens, and
No
I don't
problem.
know why. I was unmuted, and
no problem.
So thank you very much for the invitation. Good morning to everyone, and I'm really glad to speak at this, I would say, international event and panel. I'm glad to introduce you to the new ministry that has been established in Slovakia. It's the Ministry for Investments, Regional Development and Informalization. And as Nolan said, our ministry is responsible for the strategic planning and preparation of the new programming period, 2021-2027, for which there will be one single operational program, which will be managed by our ministry. This means, of course, a lot of preparatory work and strategic planning, which also relates to research, development, and innovation, because this is one of the most, I would say, crucial and prioritized parts of the new operational program. The priority axis 1, more intelligent Europe. And we are, of course, focusing on this aspect in an extensive manner, especially by preparing the smart specialization strategy. So my directorate general is responsible for the preparation process of the smart specialization strategy of Slovakia, which is an enabling condition for the allocation of the new EU funds in the programming period 2021 and 2027. We are preparing this document based on the entrepreneurial development process, which means it's a bottom-up approach where we are trying to figure out and prioritize the main research domains where the EU allocation is going to flow in the new programming period. We have identified 5 main domains in this process, which focus mostly on smart mobility, biomedicine and personalized medicine, energy, social innovation, and yeah, right now I forgot the last one, but of course informatization and cybersecurity, which are crucial parts of the Slovak economy. And basically this strategy is going to be approved by the government early next year as an enabling condition for the allocation of new EU funds. So this is a crucial document that we are currently working on. Besides this document, which is mostly related to the new programming period and the new allocation of EU funds, there are of course ongoing discussions in Slovakia and similarly as in other EU countries on the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Fund. And this fund or this opportunity should be used by our government or by Slovakia to perform also reforms in the research and innovation system. So we are not only focusing on the new allocation of EU funds in the new programming period, but also on a reform process. Because as I mentioned, the smart specialization strategy, the first step that has been done was an analytical report of the current environment in research and development in Slovakia. And one of the main findings was that the governance of research and innovation in Slovakia is very fragmented. And this is, of course, true because when we look at different roles of ministries in Slovakia, including the Ministry for Investments, our ministry, but also the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Education, which are the key players in the innovation and R&D ecosystem, we see that there is a lot of parallel activities going on within these ministries. And very often, not only ministries do not coordinate with each other, but very often there are agencies within the ministries that are very fragmented. So for instance, there is the Ministry of Economy, which has 3 or 4 agencies affiliated to perform innovation. The Ministry of Education has also 4 or 5 additional agencies. So very often these agencies do not communicate to each other and coordinate their activities. So this is one of the main, I would say, features of the Slovak research, development and innovation ecosystem, which is hindering further progress. And we will try to target this finding with a reform proposal that we are introducing to the resilience and recovery plan, which of course is not only enabling additional investments in the system, but also enabling reforms and optimization of processes. So currently we did not reach a final decision on how to tackle the fragmentation of the system, but there is a strong interest and appetite for this to happen and to perform some kind of a consolidation, either on the ministerial level, so consolidate the agencies in the Ministry of Economy, in the Ministry of Education, with our ministry playing a role of a coordinator, or trying to merge all agencies into one Chief Innovation Office, which of course is also one of the options. So this has not yet been decided. We are, I would say, playing with different scenarios and alternatives, but the interest is there because, as you mentioned, Nolan, the absorption of the RDI ecosystem in Slovakia did not prove to be ideal in the past. There is a lot of underperformance in the allocation of EU funds from the programming period 2014-2020 and the N+3 period. There are attempts how to improve this process, but we are rather focusing on setting a new environment for the new programming period, which will enable a larger allocation of EU funds. And last but not least, what I wanted to mention, our ministry is not only playing the role or trying to play the role of a coordinator in the RDI system by chairing the government council meetings for research, development, and innovation, but we are also trying to propose a component for the support of innovation in the regions in Slovakia through the resilience and recovery funds. So we are proposing a very specific measure on how we would like to connect business, the industry, the science parks, which have already been built in the past, the universities, research infrastructure, startups, and new project ideas in the regions, how to connect these and how to actually allocate seed funding for these projects to further grow. What we would like to do also is to use foreign element in identifying solid projects in the Slovak regions. We were thinking to involve renowned international players such as VTT, MIT, Fraunhofer, or EIT from the EU to help us identify projects and provide guidance on how to further develop these innovation initiatives in the regions and how to utilize the existing infrastructure of the science parks, which are currently being left empty. So we are not focusing on building new infrastructure. We are trying rather to connect and facilitate relations between these players in the regions. So in a nutshell, this is what we are trying to do, and I'm happy to answer any question.
Thanks, Peter. And you do have to leave soon.
Yeah, I will have to leave in 5 minutes. I have another panel discussion. So
yeah, no problem. But we can always follow up with you ex ante, let's say. That's so essentially you're planning to have some kind of concrete output by next year, middle of next year.
Yeah, first of all, we would like to reform the system.
Yeah.
Before the new allocation of EU funds, and this is going to take some time, but we would like to use next year for the consolidation of research and innovation agencies. First of all, a strong coordination across ministries, and then based also on the results of the smart specialization strategy to finance the content of the smart specialization strategy.
Right. Well, thanks. I think that's a great way to start off, just to have an idea of what's really happening on the ground, and obviously fully aware of the past challenges, and obviously the coordination is key for the value for money at the end of the day. So thanks for sharing, and with that we'll move to Eleonora, and I believe you might have some slides for us as well, and you can kind of share with us, some of the work in progress from E3G, which is always very insightful. So The floor is yours, Eleonora.
Nolan, just a
Yes.
second.
Sure.
I would like to say goodbye and thanks to all.
Oh,
I
you're
will
leaving
stay
now.
a bit longer with you because
Mhm.
I'm really interested in Eleanor's presentation, as she will
Great.
probably actually bring in a CEE picture. So I will
Yes.
stay a bit longer, but I would not like to interrupt Eleanor. So goodbye.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks to Nolan and GLOBSEC for organizing this event. And thank you also to Mr. Balik for that very interesting presentation from the Slovakian side. You should be able to see my screen now. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm speaking to you today from Brussels, where I work with E3G, which is a climate change think tank. Our work focuses more on the green than on the digital side of today's topic, although of course there are many synergies between the two, and a lot of what I say on green research and innovation will also apply to digital research and innovation. I'll be covering 3 main points in my 10 minutes today. The first is on the role that green research and innovation can play in tomorrow's economy, then diving more specifically into CEE member states and finalizing that with a few recommendations to both EU and national governments for these opportunities to really materialize. This is partly drawing on E3G's existing work on research and innovation, in particular this recent briefing that I've put a screenshot of on the screen, as well as an upcoming paper that we have looking specifically at research and innovation in CE countries. So moving on to the role of green research and innovation in tomorrow's economy. The Commission has set the European Green Deal and the climate neutrality objective as the EU's new growth strategy. This has also been reconfirmed in the COVID-19 recovery proposals. And due to the short time frame and the transformational nature of achieving climate neutrality, green R&I is key, specifically in developing new and promising technology, but beyond new technology, also in deploying existing technology and other solutions through innovative business models, financing schemes, and citizen engagement strategies, which is why I was very happy to hear Mr. Balik also talk about social innovation in Slovakia's plans. Importantly, green research and innovation is one of the most powerful tools that the EU has to support the global transition to climate neutrality, as the EU accounts for less than 10% of current global greenhouse gas emissions, but it really has this potential to be a prototype for global decarbonization. As it has high scientific potential, it makes up 20% of the world economy and 30% of high-level scientific publications. Beyond this kind of internal growth objective, green research and innovation is key in securing EU future economic prosperity at a global scale. So there is, of course, the competitive advantage from solving decarbonization challenges within the EU, which should be combined with cooperation with countries that will provide future markets for decarbonization solutions. The EU has a head start on this topic, but its leading position in green research and innovation and this sustainable competitiveness topic is endangered by the stagnation of EU research and innovation investments, and also the rise of other global leaders on this topic. And to make the most of this opportunity, the EU of this opportunity of both the internal and external aspects of the EU's growth strategy will depend on spreading the benefits of research and innovation policy and funds more widely across EU geographies, and ensuring that the disparities between rich and poorer member states, capital and periphery, and also between social classes are not entrenched through the research and innovation policy. Moving specifically on to green research and innovation in CE member states, as Nolan mentioned, there is this innovation gap between Eastern and Western European member states, as shown by this graph of the EU innovation scoreboard that kind of clearly shows this divide. But I think many of us will agree that this is quite a simplistic picture of East versus West, and also to some extent also North versus South. This is simplistic to some extent because assessing innovation performance is, of course, a very complex exercise. There is diversity across and within member states and CEE member states. In particular, there are some very innovative regions around capitals. Certain member states have strengths in certain parts of the innovation chain, which is, of course, is hidden by this kind of high-level analysis on overall innovation performance. And it also depends on how we measure innovation, as there is also evidence to show that the innovation efficiency, which is kind of defined as the ratio of inputs to innovation, including funding, relative to the outputs of innovation, including patents, is actually very high in many CEE and also southern member states. Nevertheless, there is this gap in innovation, and research and innovation presents the potential to transform what is seen as a burden of the climate transition, particularly in the coal regions of CEE member states, into an opportunity to transform into low carbon and innovative hubs. One example is the huge renewable energy potential that is present in many coal regions in CEE countries in particular, which have favorable geographic conditions, large areas of land, and a strong power grid and labor force, including engineers and technicians. Such a transition must, of course, be done in a socially just way, which is a key topic in research and innovation policy, especially as research and innovation is a powerful lever to drive social inclusion and as it creates new economic opportunities. But at the same time, it is important for the policy to be designed in such a way that it specifically promotes social inclusion and mitigates the sometimes negative employment effects of innovation deployment. My final slide puts forth a few recommendations on initial non-exhaustive recommendations for EU and national governments for these opportunities to materialize. This draws on the research and innovation in CEE paper that Nolan previously mentioned. The first is, as mentioned previously, around the need to incorporate social considerations in research and innovation policy and ensure that social inclusion for the transition to climate neutrality to be just. The second is on the need for an ambitious 2030 greenhouse gas emissions reduction target, which would really set the direction of travel for public research and innovation funding in the EU and send a strong signal to the private sector. The third is on setting clear priorities for green research and innovation spending, because achieving climate neutrality means that we have to make a transformational change in a short time frame. And as a result of that, it is important to prioritize and push deployment forward in certain areas, specifically through, for example, the smart specialization strategies that Mr. Balick mentioned previously, could be a tool to really develop these priorities together with the EU. And at the same time, on the EU side, it is important to have a well-defined EU-wide green research and innovation strategy that goes from being a wide-ranging collection of initiatives to being streamlined and facilitating the transition to climate neutrality in a streamlined way. And finally, tied to the previous point, is that it would be key to have an observatory body that could inform the priority setting exercise from the previous point. This should be based on the latest technical knowledge and expertise and really drive the innovation learning process, as well as redirect innovation initiatives that are failing to deliver. That's it from me. I'm happy to keep in touch about this topic and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Eleonora. So, and as you said, this is a work in progress, so we will also look forward to kind of the final report for CEE as well, and I'll be sure to share that with the group and with the participants. And I think that's an excellent jumping off point to our next kind of session with academia, because obviously, you have an idea as to what the interactions are with the government policy, but at the same time, you have your own R&D programs working with companies, and also just focusing on kind of the pure R&D. So I was hoping, you know, we have a very diverse group here as well, from Bulgaria, from Slovakia, and from Hungary. So it'd be great to hear, you know, if anything has changed in the strategy from universities now that we're in this recovery phase, and there's so much, of course, attention to rescuing the economy, to stabilizing the economy, but at the same time, of course, keeping in mind that EU, but CE in particular, has struggled with funding and supporting R&I initiatives. So maybe we can also discuss more specifically, you know, which kind of green digital technologies are available for the region, for the countries in particular, but also for cooperation as well, to again help narrow the divide between West and East and where these potential areas are. So with that, I would first turn to Mr. Georgiev, who's joining us from Sofia, I believe. So thank you for joining us, and I give you the floor to make some remarks for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Nolan, for inviting me. I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
Okay. So just to give you an overview of which institution I'm representing at this webinar, I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Business Administration at Sofia University, St. Clement Ohridski. This is the research university, let's say, of Bulgaria, the one with the most renowned research profile, and the oldest one, founded in 1888. Our faculty was re-established within the university in 1990, 30 years ago. We are just having yesterday and today our Jubilee conference, which is on the topic of just and smart transitions. So quite on the topic of our webinar as well. And actually we had a very nice session yesterday with representatives from German universities and from the Joint Research Center about the European Green Deal. And our faculty, it teaches economics and management and has research in these fields. We have currently 3 bachelor and more than 20 master's programs. And the ones that I'm leading in my department, the Department of Industrial Economics and Management, are energy markets and services and facilities management. These are both master's programs, which are directed toward professionals in the field of energy, utilities, and facilities management, or generally everything related to utilities and buildings management. So from this perspective, we have developed these programs in the past 15 years, and now we have a core team as well as additional researchers and part-time lecturers who are working on these fields. What we have seen in the past years is that the interest toward these programs and the interest from international partners for these topics is increasing. We started in 2005 with a 6 members master's program, I mean 6 students, and this year there are 33. And there is a constant demand from the sector for new knowledge, new research, and new programs related to these fields. Under these circumstances, we have also developed short-term trainings related to European energy policy, energy markets liberalization, some specific topics like even the regulation, remit, etc. And this also secures that we have a constant connection with the business and with the young people in the business who want to continue their learning even after graduation. So this is on the side of teaching mostly, the things that I have said until now. On the side of research, in the past years, we have seen an increased interest from other countries for cooperating on Horizon 2020 and other goals related to energy and climate topics. We have managed to win together with other partners in consortiums some of the applications we made, but still a small number, a couple of Horizon projects and mostly Erasmus partnerships or cost actions or smaller projects. In terms of challenges, what we see until now is the following. First, in the field of economics and management, the visibility of research is not so high, and it hasn't been high in the past years in Bulgaria because of the language of publication, Bulgarian, and because of the significance, let's say, of the topics. You know that the humanities have this problem with Scopus and Web of Science. Fortunately, there has been an effort by the Ministry of Education and Science to increase the visibility of Bulgarian universities by changing the incentive schemes. So now more and more researchers are looking for opportunities to publish in renowned journals and participate in conferences that matter. And this gradually improves the profile of the researchers in our university. However, this is a slow process. You know that there is the generation challenge. We still have people who are professors and are quite more comfortable with Russian than with English, for example, or don't know English at all because when they became PhDs, this was not a prerequisite. But gradually, you know, things are changing. I was very glad to see the conclusions from the previous meeting because some of the challenges have been mentioned there as well. The brain drain from the universities, we have this problem as well. When bright students graduate, they don't tend to stay in university. They're looking at the business, IT sectors, even energy sector, let's say. In Bulgaria, the highest salaries are in the financial sectors, IT even higher, and energy is third or fourth, depending on the year. But at the same time, a university as a vocation is not very lucrative. There are some actions being taken right now by the government for next year. There will be some increase in the basic salaries for assistant professors and everyone else. And this will also be part of the long-term change in this respect. So, I don't know, maybe I have to wrap up a bit, but we are trying, younger researchers are trying to establish more and more connections with universities and institutes that have similar research interests. We have the challenge of first being a few. I mean, not many people are staying in academia, young people, or if they stay, it is questionable why they do it and whether you can do good projects. Second, we built the portfolio, but this takes time. Third, I still think that there is a bit of maybe mistaken expectations by the Commission, European Commission I mentioned here, because the challenge of 2030 is quite big. And at the same time, we want to have research already made, proving some concepts that have been just coined by the politicians. So one of the challenges for the coming decade will be first to identify research goals that match the political ones, but second, to have enough time to produce quality research that can fit into this framework. because now we're entering in 2021. If we talk about Horizon Europe, I don't know when the first goals will be online. You know that there is still some time before it starts in full speed. So the first project results maybe will be here in 2024 or something like that. Correct me if I'm not right. And how this solves the current political conundrums related to the Green Deal, for example. Again, the academia, it moves with a different speed. In Central and Eastern Europe, mostly in Eastern Europe, and specifically in Bulgaria, I gave you the examples of why we have moved not so quickly until now. So this is one time challenge. But the second one is related to the quite close goals and the time needed to do quality research. So Nolan, I think this is okay for now, and I hope this was valuable in some way.
Absolutely. It was,
Okay.
yes. Thank you so much. And that's interesting, and obviously kind of the main kind of focus here, of course, is alignment with 2030 goals and setting that agenda now. So from academia, of course, you know, you're working with the politicians that are setting these goals, and of course, at the end of the day, I mean, I think academia is the backbone, and kind of the question is, you know, how can also governments support your objectives and make sure that the objectives are aligned, and specifically with on the energy side, I would turn to Attila now as well, and just you know, is this, for example, we discussed you know, geothermal energy potential, certainly in Hungary, also in Slovakia, and I would ask, you know, is this something that's kind of gaining traction, you know, with the EU priorities for the green digital transformation? Do you see more hope, more opportunity within this recovery phase, or what are you doing to kind of maybe capitalize on these efforts? Because it seems like these are, you know, something that you were looking to build momentum towards when we discussed this in March. So have things changed since then? Are you optimistic that some of these priorities will be met and you have more support? So I'll turn to you, Attila, and you can kind of share the perspective from Hungary.
Thank you very much. Well, a lot of things changed in Hungary, and there are several things which are unchanged. First of all, thank you for inviting me. We had very interesting talks now, and when the Slovakian Secretary of Innovation of Technology just said that in Slovakia, one of the main problems that the research and development system is very diffuse. In Hungary, the problem is that it's very centralized. So practically all of the research and development projects are handled by the National Research and Development and Innovation Office, and also joint with the Ministry of Technology and Innovation. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. I also have some slides to share with you. I hope I can do it very fast. Okay.
Yes.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Everything is fine. Just I cannot share it now. I cannot start it.
We can see
yes.
it.
Okay. So
Control L.
yes,
Control
yes,
L for
it's
full
work
screen.
now. Now we have a lot of things happening in Hungary. The geothermal energy, which was important several months ago, now it's not so important because there was some other development, and also some other priorities from the European Union is now also priorities for Hungary. Actually, yesterday I had a meeting with the secretary of this Innovation and Technology Ministry concerning energy storage project with power to gas technology. And today, just after this meeting in 15 minutes, I have to have a meeting with the representatives of MVM and also with the Secretary of Nuclear Energy in Hungary. It will be a battery storage meeting. So as you can see, now the energy storage is more important than energy production for some reason. Well, what happened since our last meeting? 2 years ago, the Secretary of the Energy Policy, Dr. Péter Kaderiak, established something which was called Council for Energy Innovation. It was a successful initiative, but due to the COVID, most activity ceased in this group, except for one group, which was the work group for energy storage. And because this work group was led by the president of the National Research and Development and Innovation Office, somehow all the energy-related research and development coordination shifted to this group. So it means that even proposals of projects are very centralized now, but it's only temporary because this COVID situation. But it also means that we can move very quickly. And there was two other important changes, that in the summertime, the National Hydrogen Platform of Hungary was established. It works parallelly with this Energy Storage Council, but also with cooperation. So they are collecting ideas and then giving the ideas for this council, and the council is making proposals from that. And just 2-3 weeks ago, it was the starting of the Hungarian Battery Strategy Alliance, which is also in accordance with the EU policies, because battery storage is more and more important now. Recently, there was some closed research and development calls, and the project is going to start in December and January. Actually, it's not only 4 calls, it's 4 group of calls. One of the calls was about energy storage with the conversion of carbon-free surplus energy to hydrogen or to methane. You know, Hungary has a quite big natural gas storage facility. So for us, energy storage by biomethane is very good opportunity. Then the other group was about the increasing of the stability and flexibility of the Hungarian electricity grid. Also, several programs started to establish energy communities, and which is probably the biggest program, that Hungary decided to have a so-called science park system, and one of the science park will focus on sustainability, including renewable energy. It will be in Nagykanizsa, which is in southwest of Hungary, and it's also one of the center of the Hungarian oil company. So they will have a quite big industrial support. What is the situation in our university? There are some bad situation. For the last 4 years, we had the so-called Center for University and Industry Cooperation, and this center had a quite big part for energy research and development, supported by the MVM. The program will be finished in next March, and they will start a new 4-year period, but without energy research and development. And the reason for that, my university also got a possibility to build a new science park, but the science park is not for energy, but for informatics. So one university, one science park, and our university is for other purpose. So the problem is now that the university do not have any centralized strategy for energy research and development. But the good situation is that now the university is part of the National Hydrogen Platform, and we are already involved in several hydrogen related research. And also we are part of the consortium for energy storage, which is using solar energy and some biocatalysts to turn carbon dioxide and water to methane. And that's also one of our project, and I hope it's gonna start in January. So formerly we had focus on energy production. That was what I mentioned in March or April. No, it was March. Then the geothermal energy, for example, it was in energy production. But now the funding is changed, and you know you have always to follow funding. And now we are interested in energy storage and distribution. I think it's a little bit problematic, and it's also a problem in not only in Europe but in the whole world, that people do not want to be involved in energy production, but rather in storage and distribution, because somehow it's cleaner and probably the money is in the distribution. So, but before distributing, somehow you have to produce it. And now just back to a little to our university. Then we are also, just like the Bulgarian universities, we are also looking for partners all over Europe, but especially in the Visegrad 4, in energy storage and heat storage, and also for this utilization of low temperature heat sources. We also have the problem with the shortage of researchers, because students are finishing the university and they are leaving to companies. Companies can pay 5 times higher salary than any university. So it's not a good situation, but we cannot do anything about that. Only we have to share researchers with universities, and with joint project they can work for us and will be paid by the industry. So that's the only way. And thank you for the organizers. And if you have questions, I can stay here for a few more minutes than to leave. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much, Attila, for that input. It's very interesting. And I think that was a theme from our previous discussion. Certainly, the policy focus has been more on the energy storage side than production. And of course, each member state has different energy mixes as a starting point. And just because you do have to leave soon, I would just ask, maybe the funding, are these initiatives are from the EU funds that are then directed from the government? Is that what these strategies are?
Yeah, that's from EU fund.
Yeah,
EU fund distributed by the government. But we do not know what the future will be, because now Hungary has a special situation. But we hope that everything will be solved for the next year.
And would you say that's aligned with sort of the energy sector working with MVM? There's alignment there?
Yes,
okay.
yes,
So government, academia, private sector, everybody's pushing forward with kind of energy storage innovation.
we have to go in one direction, all of us, because that's the only way to get something, especially for small countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And that's, I think, another point for discussion here, is just how to create this this regional ecosystem, whether it's V4, V4 plus. And as you said, you're looking for cooperation, international cooperation, but also regional cooperation. So, here we have Mr. Georgiev, we have Mr. Halama. So maybe this is an opportunity as well for you guys to continue communication, maybe cooperation. And with that, I will hand the floor to Mr. Halama, who is coming from Eastern Slovakia. And maybe you could kind of update us on the work that you're doing. And obviously geothermal is in your portfolio, but also hydrogen storage. So this probably lines up with Mr. Imre's points, but the floor is yours, and you can just share with us how things are looking, maybe again with government, private sector, and who you're working with, and whether you think there's this kind of alignment, or as Mr. Balik was saying, maybe is more fragmented in Slovakia compared to Hungary.
Yeah, thank you, Nolan, for invitation and opportunity to spread some ideas on this forum. And regarding Mr. Barlik from Ministry, I really like this idea to renaissance with research agencies, because it's very, very fragmented in Slovakia. Several exist and making a parallel activities, but there is also fragmented research groups also working on one topic. For example, we have mentioned green technologies like hydrogen batteries, so it's very, very fragmented. There was some experiments to concentrate it in big projects and to make huge consortia, but still in history was the problem to make it clear at the ministry. So now I see a new activities. I really like these ideas. So it is good that we have also participating in this work groups building on strategies, especially on missing strategies in batteries research or in hydrogen technologies research. So we have launched in March hydrogen strategy for Košice self-government region. We have set up a group of researchers and industrial partners and publics to have a view on this or map the potential of hydrogen technology in Košice region. But it's the same with batteries. We know now that in Europe we set a plan to make it green and to make it digital or connected, how you call it in this event. But I must say, I must mention one critical point here regarding young generation, that okay, we have attracted a lot of young generation studying IT sector. So we have plenty of opportunities to choose from very excellent young generation, which is focusing on AI, on programming and so on. But on the other hand, if we have green technologies, behind these green technologies always is chemistry, physics, or material science. And here, this young generation is missing. So we need to attract somehow this young generation from for these green technologies, especially these natural science subjects or technician subjects for material science, for example, and to attract it. So somehow we make these IT technologies like AI, augmented reality, and so on, to implement it into this natural science technical subjects. So this is one critical point I see in Central Europe. Maybe it's a problem also in Bulgaria or Hungary. But we are working actively on this, and especially, for example, we are also active. Tomorrow we have a working group with Mr. Balik from Ministry on Just Transition Fund. So this fund, which is really very effective in the future, or will be effective for self-government regions. So to widespread these green technologies across industrial sectors, especially in regions like we are in Košice. We need to decarbonize it because we have a lot of coal energy power plant. We have a global steel manufacturer company here. So it is essential to do and to set up a really strategic plan, joining all the triangle like academia, industry, and the self-governed region. So from my point of view, I see, because we are as a researcher, we are at the state of the art in these technologies at lab scales, and we see the potential. I see very enormous potential in application, especially of artificial intelligence in chemistry or in material science, where we need to save the money in the research projects and to be much faster and efficient. in developing new materials, for example, from batteries or fuel cell catalyzers for hydrogen technology. So I see big opportunity, and yes, we are able to do it, but we need to concentrate critical number of scientists, and from this just transition for modernization, next generation EU, the budget is prepared, as was mentioned. So these are one critical side, but I see the role of universities and academia in unlocking the potential of this science. Artificial intelligence was mentioned, but there is another challenge in digital world, and especially quantum chemical calculation, or the power of supercomputer. And this can be more efficient research than ever, because as you know, supercomputers make several billions processes in seconds, so we need to calculate or predict the properties of a material, which will be very, very effective in the future in these green technologies, for example. So now I see that we need to concentrate the budget and concentrate the capacity, because as Mr. Balik mentioned, we have infrastructure here in Slovakia, very excellent. We have consortia like Promatech Center, which we have 20 million euro in the scientific devices for material science support, for example, but we have no capacities. So there is a step, for example, how to join a region like Ukraine or Balkan region, especially in the young generation. So next generation students in the east part of Slovakia will be maybe from Ukraine, partly, or in a certain extent. And I know there is a trend from Balkan countries to study in Bratislava, at the west part of Slovakia. So there is one link to join these areas into research and innovation in Slovakia. And the second line may be in these hydrogen technologies, because for massive production of hydrogen or distribution and make hydrogen economy in Central European region, we need a massive volume of hydrogen, and we don't have capacities of water, for example. So we need countries like Balkan, which has sea, and unlimited access to production of hydrogen with gigawatts electrolyzers from the seawater, yeah? And when distributed through a pipeline system to Central Europe, and maybe in 10 years or more, applied here at industrial scale. So, but all this in pilot scales or pilot demonstration research. So we need to transfer it very fastly, and we are prepared for cooperation, like we mentioned, on with any of partners from this region. So this from my side, maybe some more, but this is critical, what I see.
Great. Thank you, Maros. Fantastic. So it seems like there's, you know, a lot of kind of common goals from academia, which makes sense, and everything is kind of following sort of the EU pillars of green and digital as maybe a guiding point. And maybe I would come back to Eleonora. Obviously, you know, there are several different EU funding instruments coming out of the last MFF. And now as we enter into negotiations for the next MFF, and obviously the next generation EU, do you think that there needs to be some kind of sort of reform or maybe emphasis on ensuring that funds, obviously the Just Transition Fund, which is targeting CEE, but for example, Horizon Europe at the EU level tends to be dominated by Western European institutions. So do you think anything needs to change kind of top down? Because as we can see, the bottom up, there seems to be a lot of momentum here in the region. So I was just wondering if you could come in on that and comment on how maybe there could be some structural changes at the EU level from Brussels.
Yeah, thanks. Two thoughts come to mind from this top-down changes that are necessary. I think the first is what I mentioned also in the presentation, the need to also at the EU level move from this fragmented approach to research and innovation, because research and innovation is present in many different funds at the EU level, including Horizon Europe, also the Just Transition Fund, Modernization Fund, Innovation Fund. There are lots of them, and really kind of streamlining it and making sure that they all work in the same direction, and also making the process of applying to this funding more efficient by streamlining the process. That is definitely one area for improvement at the EU level. The second is, as you mentioned also, Nolan, the importance of making sure that there isn't this funding divide between Eastern and Western European member states. And to some extent, now with the recent Horizon Europe and European Research Area strategy that has come out from the Horizon Europe plans for next year, there is some more focus at the EU level on this kind of widening of research and innovation funding. But yeah, that is still kind of at the strategic level in the EU, and remains to be seen how that will happen in practice and what impact that will have.
And Mr. Georgiev, sorry, coming back to you. I mean, does this, are you paying attention to kind of the EU level machinations? I mean, in your day-to-day work, obviously Mr. Attila had to leave, and he's having these discussions with a very concentrated effort in Hungary, which seems to be aligned with these EU goals. But would you say that you're focusing on this next generation EU? Is this something that's really having like a real impact in your strategy and your work?
It's hard to tell, because we are not so much looking forward to the future programs, and most of the colleagues look at current opportunities. We also haven't set up until now a project office at the faculty. We're doing it now. I have become dean in the past year, exactly 1 year ago, and this was one of my first things to set up a project office for the faculty, because the central one for the university cannot go into depth of the different topics that can be covered by the faculties. So I'm not prepared to tell you more about that. We're following the national research efforts. For example, the research and innovation funding in Bulgaria will be restructured now. For the next budget period, there will be a special agency, and it will be outside of the Ministry of Education and Science. And this will be an agency specifically for research and innovation funding. And this is an improvement, because the current way of financing research and innovation within a national science fund based under the Ministry of Education has not been working quite well. To be honest, I've been also evaluating some of the project proposals under the national funding, and it could be quite a tiresome experience, because you see the big gap between what is proposed and what, let's say, the European standard should be. So I expect that the government with this new agency will set a higher standard for financing, and will direct funds for larger projects. this is another specifics of Bulgarian research funding. I mean the national one, that it's giving to everyone, but small chunks. So there are many universities here. Another peculiarity, about 50 universities nationwide, which is a big number because they cover small topics, small number of fields. And they receive funding through the national research funds as well. So there is for everyone, but not much. And I expect this will change in the next 7 years gradually as well.
Do you expect that there will be more of these funds available then? I mean, considering the recovery package?
Yeah, exactly, because there are new funds from the Just Transition mechanism. We have also several coal regions in Bulgaria. Two coal regions in the NUTS 2 framework, but the government is now defining maybe 9 regions out of the 28 regions the country has on the national level. So I expect that these funds will also be earmarked for research, part of them related to the transition, to new skills and knowledge, to digital transformation. The Ministry of Economy has started an initiative for hydrogen because this is one of the accents in the new transition policy. Energy efficiency will be one of the priorities as well, and there is a possibility for trainings too. So yeah. Great,
and of course, hydrogen is a technology in the very early stage. Maybe I would come back to Maros here as well, because of course, there has to be a market at some point as well, and this, as Mr. Georgiev mentioned, this is obviously a high priority at the EU level, and the IPCEI funding for hydrogen, the hydrogen value chain or the battery value chain. So where do you think not only Slovakia, but where does Central Eastern Europe fit into this vision? And obviously specifically with energy storage being the batteries and the hydrogen. Do you see this as an opportunity for kind of an increased role for the region? For example, obviously coming from the 1990s and the foreign direct investments for the automotive sector, but that's more of an end product, and innovation is something that typically takes place in the headquarters of these companies. But now maybe this is the opportunity for Central Eastern Europe to really add value throughout the supply chain with kind of the innovation and the technology development. Do you see this as really a new opportunity in the next decade?
Yes, Nolan, we are still working on national strategies for hydrogen, but also for battery alliance. But yes, we have joined the IPCEI project for batteries. So now is the second round in this IPCEI project is under development or under reviewing in DG GROW. So we don't know a final decision at this point for Slovakia, but there are 4 big consortia which joining this IPCEI project in batteries. Where I think more than 120 indirect partners in this project, also covering universities, not only in the east part Slovakia, but across the Slovakia. So the biggest player like Slovak Technical University, University Žilina, and of course the Technical University of Košice. But still, I see the big gap in research and concentration of research in this university, especially in this field. So yes, infrastructure, especially for material science, is there, but we need to concentrate researchers focusing or a changing way primary topics from photovoltaics materials to materials for electrodes for batteries or for electrodes for fuel cell and electrolyzer. So now we see this trend, and it changed dramatically, rapidly. So there is momentum here at the east part of a research institute in Slovakia, joining this research activities and making new projects and proposals for different agencies, especially in batteries and hydrogen. But still, we need to wait for how set up a government for the topic, because we now see the trend in one ministry to go to the hydrogen technologies, but it's not a governmental view. It's only one ministry. So we need to wait, because it is still in communication, I think. And what we have done is to develop a national hydrogen center in Košice now, and we need to concentrate also the budget from the government level to support research activities in this field, because it fits to this Green Deal topics across Europe. But still, we have some projects which is running now, especially with energy sector, with gas infrastructure, because we need to check validity and safety of injecting hydrogen in some percentage in the gas infrastructure. So still is under focus of interest, and there is a pilot project, and will end, I think, in 2 years. Could be maybe final decision, maybe another experiments needed to verify it. So this is what this is my idea on this tutorial.
Sure. Yeah. So still, I think, yeah, we're even in kind of the early stages, obviously, when it comes to the national recovery and resilience plans, and formulating that cohesive strategy with regions at the national level. And maybe kind of the last question I would conclude with for all of you from where you sit. I mean, do you think there, and Attila mentioned, this idea of visibility and kind of coming back to the sort of overarching kind of brain drain challenge in Central and Eastern Europe. I mean, is there a way to better promote, this work? Because I think maybe a lot of people, even in Brussels, are not so aware of these initiatives in the area of green and digital transformation that's happening at the universities, as we can hear, and also that's being now pushed by governments, obviously more so than any time in the last decade. So, I mean, for example, attracting international students for one, but also, cooperating and maybe somehow kind of branding this effort within the region to kind of bring the visibility, showcase the fact that, Central Eastern Europe, plans to be a player in these new technologies through research and innovation. So do you think, there can be kind of a strategy or, cooperation coming back to this idea of an ecosystem in the region? Maybe I would start with Eleonora from Brussels. I mean, obviously you're engaged in this topic, focusing on CEE, but what do you think the message could be in Brussels, for example, to help support these initiatives and maybe, create some kind of visibility or branding?
Yeah, thanks. A big question, but the hot topic, of course, now in Brussels is, as we've mentioned, the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the Recovery and Resilience plans. So I think that, to the extent possible, of course, because it's coming from the national governments, but I think that is really an opportunity for this kind of profiling of universities in CEE countries. Yeah, that with the recovery and resilience plans, the idea, at least from the Commission perspective, is for these plans to be quite holistic and co-decided within each country. So there would, of course, be the opportunity for that to be the case. Then in each member state, the process will be different. But I think that would be a big opportunity, depending on, of course, the political situation in each member state.
And Mr. Georgiev, I mean, and Maros, are you guys communicating with one another? You know, university to university at the regional level, or you know, as you mentioned, Mr. Halama, you know, with the kind of non-EU countries on the border, and maybe this potential to, you know, form some kind of a value chain. Is this something that's on your agenda, or you're still, I mean, I understand now you're very focused on just kind of the regional and national plans, but would you see some opportunities there in the future to kind of, I don't know, even have these discussions, or, you know, looking specifically at coal regions in transition? Is this something that's on the radar?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks to Maros for finding me on LinkedIn before the event. So we are connected already. Regarding partnership, yes, we haven't known each other until now, but we can definitely explore further on what project opportunities we may identify together. We're looking for opportunities always, and usually this also takes time. I told you about the project office in our faculty. One of the ideas of the project office is to deepen existing connections with other universities. For example, we have many Erasmus students and professors visiting in both directions, so we just need to do one more step and identify such possibilities. We just started a nationally funded project in our faculty with 2 partners from Germany and from France. It's called ScholarNet, and it has the purpose to improve the research capacity of the faculty. And this is exactly through identifying common areas for publications and research. So we're also building on that. And of course, we are trying to identify similar interests across the board. So technical universities for sure are interesting for our department because of our interdisciplinary topic of energy markets. Yeah, any contact we make, we try to explore further whether or not we can partner on. On the other topic about the visibility from Brussels, yes, there is a bit of a distance between Sofia and Brussels, and not everything we do is quite visible. I'm sure about that. But there is also the purpose of research from the point of view of policymakers there. I still have the feeling that policy is not always based on existing research, because our conference yesterday, we had some very brilliant research presentations, and some things are quite clear for the research community. But policymakers, they have something else in mind, or the elections made them do something different than what researchers have found out. So this is the big gap, I think, between policymakers and existing research. So existing research not always is enough for current policies. And then policymakers go back to researchers and ask them and give them some funds to make another try and see whether this time you will get something that fits better to the policy. And I'm finishing with that. The last thing that I mentioned, it requires time. So if researchers have reached the point and found out something, and now you want them to start something quite new and think in a new paradigm, this will take time. And this, unfortunately, is not very useful for the current policy making.
Indeed. And so, Mr. Halama, is the situation, maybe it's a bit different in Slovakia, just to conclude. So it seems like, obviously, hearing from Mr. Balik, there's a concerted effort to concentrate the various ministries and their agencies. Would you say you guys are kind of heading in the right direction, and this is a good kind of starting point in Slovakia?
Yeah, definitely. I see this is the right direction. Especially now, what is changing in Slovakia is that there is a synchronization of steps on the level of ministry, self-governing region, and academy. And this was not in history. So now I think this is one critical point, which is this is advantage for moving ahead. And regarding this international visibility, what you have asked, we have a project office for research, innovation, and international relation here at our faculty. We have set up in some residencies of association across on national level, but also in Brussels. And what we have a part of ULISEU's network as a technical university, which is a network of 7 universities across Europe, and we share research activities or support research activities in selected field, and increase mobility of students. So spending semester, our Slovak student at Innsbruck University or Sevilla or back, and so we support Erasmus on one side, and the second one between non-European countries. We cooperate with EIST agency, so there is plenty of opportunity if you have industrial research project to pay some small salary to students abroad, especially from non-European countries, to come here and to be a part of international team of students participating partly on some research activities. So this is our activity, what we do here.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So we have reached our time limit, and I really appreciate all of the inputs. Just having this discussion, I think it's valuable, obviously, for feedback at the national level, and that's something that we will be sure to do at GLOBSEC. The idea here is to bring in some regional perspectives and make sure that we share these views, and obviously try to enhance cooperation and ecosystems over what are now fairly clearly defined and common objectives moving into the next decade. So I would like to thank Eleonora coming to us from Brussels, and we look forward to the output from E3G, and I'll be sure to also put that up on the website as part of the conclusions for this webinar. Thank you, Maros, so much, and Antanas, and Attila, and Peter, who had to leave early, but this has been very enriching, and we will be sure to continue to monitor and look for other opportunities next year to make sure that maybe there's even more kind of alignment and joint efforts with these technologies. So with that, thank you again, and everyone have a lovely Tuesday. So thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.